Hey everybody, I'm Holly, aka the Scientology Geek, and I know I'm not doing face cam today because I look like utter trash. So I thought we would just do a cameraless recording of Data Series 10, The Missing Scene from the 23rd of June 1970. Without any announcements or anything like that, I think we can just dive into it.
The biggest omitted data would be the whole scene. A person who does not know how the scene should be can thereafter miss most of the outpoints in it.
We already went over this. It's just know what you're looking at before you know the scene, before you do any kind of analysis on it.
An example is the continual rewrite of the international code, signaling by flags between ships by some convention composed of clerks who have never gone to sea.
I don't think you necessarily have to go to sea in order to do a flag code.
Not knowing the scene, the International Code of Signals now contains "How are your kidneys?" but nothing about lifeboats.
I think that's a complete lie. Hubbard's pulling this out of his ass. I'm pretty sure they have something about lifeboats. I mean, I'm not even a captain or any kind of sea personnel, but even I know that flags between ships would have something about boats. This statement's utterly ridiculous.
College education became rather discredited in Europe until students were required to work in areas of actual practice as part of their studies.
He's not giving us idea of when that is or whatever. So again, I think he's lying. I'm pretty sure college education has always had some kind of actual practice.
Educated far from reality, students had no scene. Thus, no data they had was related by them to an actual activity. There was even an era when the practical man or practical engineer was held in contempt. That was when the present culture started to go down.
Again, he's not giving any times for this. He's not giving any examples or proof, which again makes me think that this whole thing is wrong. That he's completely making this up.
On the other hand, one of the most long-lived activities around is the wine industry of Portugal. It has almost no theory trained. It's total scene. Every job in it is by apprenticeship for years. It's very constant and very successful. A good blend would be theory and practical in balance. That gives one data and activity, but it could be improved by stressing also the ideal scene. Bodies of data. Data classifies in similar connections or similar locations. A body of data is associated by the subject to which it's applicable or by the geographical area to which it belongs. A body of data can also be grouped as to time, like a historical period. Illogic occurs when one or more data is misplaced into the wrong body of data for it. An example would be Los Angeles smog was growing worse, so we find New York. That's pretty obviously a misplace. Cars were no longer in use, bacterial warfare had taken its toll. I'm sorry, madam, but you cannot travel first class on a third-class passport. Humanoid response to such displacements is to be reasonable. A new false datum is dreamed up and put into the body of data to explain why that datum is included. Reasonableness is often inserted as explanation of other outpoints also.
And again, here we see that reasonableness is a bad thing. In Scientology, they redefine it so that to be reasonable is a problem.
In the smog one, it could be dreamed up that New York's exports or imports were causing LA smog.
But I could see that if you actually showed some kind of logic between the sentences. That's just called interpretation, though, in this case.
In the car one, it could be imagined that bacteriological warfare had wiped out all the people. In the train one, it could be inserted that in the country, passports were used instead of tickets. The brain strains to correctly classify data into its own zones and is very projective or imaginative when it's not. Intelligence tests accidentally use this one very often.
Alright, I will say that in cults, people do this to try to make things make sense. And this is common in Scientology as well, along with many other religious groups. When something doesn't make sense, people are going to try to interpret it in such a way that it does.
It remains that an outpoint can occur when a datum belonging to one zone of data, location, or time is inserted into another zone where it doesn't. Algebra is sometimes hard to learn for some because numbers are invaded by letters. 2x equals 10, x is of course 5. A part of a new student's mind says letters are letters and make words. Primitive rejective responses to foreigners is a mental reaction to a body of people, in this case being invaded by a person not of that tribe. If the scene's wholly unknown, one doesn't know what data belongs to it. Thus a sense of confusion results. Recruits can be sent for ruddy rods for rifles, and apprentice painters can be ordered to get cans of sky blue lamp black. A sense of humor is in part an ability to spot outpoints that should be rejected from a body of data. In fact, a sense of humor is based on both rejection and absurd outpoints of all types.
I don't think that's what humor is. Let me read that again.
A sense of humor is in part an ability to spot outpoints that should be rejected from a body of data.
That's not a sense of humor. He's making stuff up again.
Reasonable people accept displacements with an amazing tranquility by imagining connecting links or assuming they do not know the ideal scene. A reasonable person would accept a pig in a parlor by imagining that there was a good reason for it, and leave the pig in the parlor and revise their own ideal scene. Yet pigs belong to a body of data including barns, pens, farms, animals, and parlors belong to a body of data including teacups, knickknacks, conversation, and humans. Possibly Professor Bunt, who discovered in 1879 that humans were animals, had seen too many pigs in parlors, and based the whole of psychology on the confusion of bodies of data.
Oh my god. No, humans are animals. We're part of the animal kingdom. We've evolved alongside other animals in the animal kingdom. We're not a separate group of beings. We're just a more advanced version. Advanced according to our own standards.
Base the whole of psychology on a confusion of bodies of data. No.
No. Just no, Hubbard, no. Why? God, this is just utter madness.
Murder in a hospital as done by psychiatry would be a confusion of bodies of actions. Actions belong to their own bodies of data.
Of course he attributes the murder to psychiatry.
One drives a car, rides a horse. One doesn't ride a car, but one can drive a horse. But the action, the motions involved with driving a horse are very different than those used in driving a car. This is a language breakdown called a homonym. One word means two different things. Japanese is an easy language except for its use of the same word for several different things. Two Japanese talking commonly have to draw Chinese characters. Japanese is written with Chinese characters to each other to unravel what they mean. They're in a perpetual struggle to pry apart bodies of data.
Kanji does use some Chinese characters. They're just pronounced differently. But there's also two other types of Japanese characters. Just to say Japanese is written with Chinese characters, I think, puts a broad generalization on the entire language itself. That should not be made.
1234 red 789 P987 green 432 apple as a statement would probably tie up CIA codebreakers for weeks as they would know it was a code. The same statement would tie up a football coach as he would know it was a team play. A mathematician would know it fitted into some other activity other than his. Hardly anyone would classify it as a totally meaningless series of symbols.
Alright, for CIA codebreakers, you could see it if it was put into some kind of communication between two dangerous individuals or groups. You could possibly see that as a code. It doesn't mean it is a code, but in the context of why the CIA is code breaking it, it probably is.
Same statement would tie up a football coach as he would know it was a team play.
I mean, I'm sure I don't play football, I don't watch football, I don't know football. I'm sure there were some terms that if this statement was used with a football coach, I'm sure he would know that it was complete nonsense and gibberish. So there's a reverse compulsion. It all depends on the context of the statement.
So there's a reverse compulsion to try to fit any datum found into some body of data. The mind operates toward logic, particularly in classes of things. The sensible handling of data, of course, includes spotting a datum, terminal, item, action grouped in with a body of data wrong for it, and in spotting that a datum does not have to belong anywhere at all. Included in mental abilities is putting similar data into one type of action, items, or data. Car parts, traffic rules, communications are each a body of data in which one can fit similar data. When a person has some idea of the scene involved, he should be able to separate the data in it into similar groups. An org board is an example of this. Sections are broad classes of action or items into which one can fit the related data. Departments are a broader body of related data, actions, and items. Divisions are even broader but still cover related classes of data. The whole org is a very broad class of data, determined in part by the type of product being made. If a person has trouble relating data to its proper body of data, if he were unaware or reasonable, he would have an awful lot of trouble finding his way around an org or routing dispatches or getting things or wearing his own hat. Orders are a broad class of data. Orders from proper sources is a narrower body of data. If a person cannot tell the difference, he'll follow anyone's orders, and that'll snarl him up most thoroughly. I once knew a carpenter so obliging and so unable to classify orders that he built knickknacks, cabinets, shelves for any staff member who asked, and wasted all the time and materials and orders from his boss that were to have built a house.
I doubt this. I completely doubt this statement. He's making stuff up again to make people seem stupid so that he seems intelligent.
The house materials and money and the carpenter's time and pay were all expended without anything of value to show for it. Not only was he unable to relate orders to their own classes, but also couldn't relate materials and plans to a house. In most miscarriages of projects, it'll be found that someone on the line cannot relate data or actions to their own classes. Along with this goes other illogics. So the ability to spot illogics in a known scene can directly relate to efficiency and even to success and survival. A switch intended for a house put into an airplane electrical system cuts out at 30,000 feet due to the wrong metal to withstand cold, and there goes the airplane.
You're making them in two separate manufacturing facilities. One is specifically meant for airplanes, and one is specifically for houses.
A part from one class of parts is included wrongly in another class of parts. So there's an incorrectly included datum, which is a companion to the omitted datum as an outpoint. This most commonly occurs when, in the mind, the scene itself is missing and the first thing needed to classify data is not there. An example is camera storage by someone who has no idea of types of cameras. Instead of classifying all the needful bits of a certain view camera in one box, one inevitably gets all the lens hoods of all cameras jumbled into one box marked lens hoods. To assemble or use the view camera, one spends hours trying to find its parts in boxes neatly labeled camera backs, lenses, and tripods, etc. Here, when the scene of what a setup view camera looks like and operates like is missing, one gets a closer identification of data than exists. Lens hoods are lens hoods, tripods are tripods. Thus, a wrong system of classification occurs out of scene ignorance.
How much do we have left? Okay, we're gonna get this done. We're gonna plow through this.
A traveler unable to distinguish one uniform from another solves it by classifying all uniforms as porters, hands his bag to an arrogant police captain, and that's how he spent his vacation in jail. Lack of a scene brings about too tight an identification of one thing with another. This can also exclude a vital bit, making a disassociation. A newly called up army lieutenant passes right on by an enemy spy dressed as one of his own sailors. An experienced sergeant right behind him claps the spy in jail accurately because he wasn't wearing "is" at the way we do in the Fusiliers. Times change data classification. In 1920, anyone with a camera near a seaport was a spy. In 1960, anyone not carrying a camera couldn't be a tourist, so was watched. So the scene for one cultural period is not the scene for another.
That actually makes some sense.
Thus, a class of data for a given time belongs broadly or narrowly to itself, including a datum in it or from another time, or excluding a datum from it, or forcing a datum to have a class can in any combination produce an illogical situation. Some knowledge of the scene itself is vital to an accurate and logical assembly or review of data. The scene, therefore, knowledge of is the basic omitted data. The remedy, of course, is to get more data on what the scene itself really should consist of. When the scene is missing, one has to study what the scene is supposed to consist of, and just not more random data about it.
That was a long one. So we've gone over know the scene. We've gone over what bodies of data are. I never thought you could ramble on for so long about data. I mean, I think 2 examples would have been fucking easy enough, but no, Hubbard had to fucking go on with it for like 5 pages, and you wonder why people get bored. We're gonna take a look at the situation next, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, not too bad. So we'll do that next time. Like if you like the video, dislike if you don't, comment with your feedback or questions, good, bad, or sideways, and subscribe to be kept up to date on future content. I'll talk to all of you later. See ya.